So Keith, tell us a little bit about yourself and how Darwinism became such a topic of interest to you.
I was never really opposed to the idea of evolution or Darwinism. As a matter of fact, I grew up, believing in evolution and Darwinism, and I didn't, even though I had a religious faith, I didn't have any problem with the idea of theistic evolution. So it wasn't that I had any kind of bias against Darwinism or anything like that. But as I got older, a few things piqued my interest, and I started poking around and looking at it, and I realized there's some really big empirical problems with Darwinian evolution that seem to be glossed over in the textbooks, and that all the strident atheists just kept glossing over. And what's more is the way they gloss over it with really cheap rhetorical tricks. And they'd use straw men, they'd use ad hominem attacks, they'd do all this stuff to kind of detract from the critics of Darwinism. And of course that kind of piqued my interest further. So I looked into it, and I started realizing, wow, there are some pretty big empirical problems with Darwinism. But then the real clincher came when I started realizing they were using science to promote this worldview or religion of atheism. And as I assess the evidence, and I know as a lot of experts assess the evidence, cosmologists, physicists, biologists, and they look at the balance in the universe, they look at the information systems in life, they look at consciousness, and all this body of empirical evidence, it points just as easily, if not more so, towards the idea of a created and designed universe. So that's kind of what really got me on the road to studying Darwinism.
So once you recognized this, when you looked at the education you received in the public school system, how do you think that impacted your worldview, and how do you think it impacts the worldview of young people today?
I think Darwinism really impacts people's worldview today in a really powerful way, but it's a really insidious way. It's not something that necessarily people just examine and really think about and deliberate and argue in an upfront way. It's just kind of Darwinism is taken as fact, and it's treated as fact. And our entertainment systems and our academic systems and all this stuff just kind of are predicated on the idea that Darwinism is true. And so it's never really examined, objectively. It's just kind of taken, and so that's what I mean by it's insidious. And I think it impacts us in a really profound way, because when you think about it, Darwinism proposes that human beings are accidents of nature. And when you think about that, that is an equal and opposite proposition to our Judeo-Christian heritage, which teaches us that we are sons and daughters of a living God. And so when you accept the idea that you're an accident of nature, then all of a sudden, there is no such thing as absolute morality. You're just kind of lost in the cosmos. Morality just becomes a survival mechanism. Same way with marriage. Marriage isn't any kind of a sacred commitment. It's just a survival mechanism that the human race has evolved. So it affects us in all kinds of ways that way.
That's when you put it that way, it's kind of eye-opening. So you've also authored several other books. You've authored American Essays, which is an e-published book by Trail Media. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the essays are kind of an outgrowth of your last question. They kind of examine kind of the insidious impact that Darwinism has on our politics, our public policies, our schools. And it's really fun read, hopefully, for a lot of people, because if you don't have time to read, they're just real short pieces. And if you're not really inclined to read, they're really fun pieces. And so anyone can pick them up and just kind of enjoy them. They're short, they're hard-hitting, they're enjoyable, and they expose some of the ways Darwinism is affecting our lives.